Hi, welcome to Supporting All Learners. We're so excited for you to be here, and we really hope that you learn a lot from our presentation today. My name is Elizabeth Twyman. I am an accommodations coordinator at a high school in Missouri. I have a background, I have a bachelor's in special education, and I have a master's in educational leadership and special education. I have been teaching in the world of special education for 17 years, 12 years in Catholic Ed. I have been married to my husband, Justin, going on 6 years. We have two sons, Grayson, who is 4, who just started pre-K at a local Catholic elementary school, and Easton, who is 8 months.
Hello, my name is Kelly Fick. I'm currently in my 8th year teaching in special education, 5th year at Elias Catholic High School. I'm certified in mild to moderate cross-categorical disabilities, and also received my master's in education. I'm married to Sarah, and our son Charlie is almost 2, and we have baby number 2 coming in July. I look forward to this opportunity to be able to present to you all, and hopefully you'll be able to take away a few things that can help your students in your classroom.
Okay, like we do all things in Catholic education, let's start off with a prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Father of all that is good and holy, we ask that you bless us with your infinite love and mercy as we work with all students made in your image. Those students that read with grace and those that need grace to read. Those that lift others up and those that need to be lifted up. Those that embrace learning and those that need to be embraced to learn. Those that make us smile and those that need to smile. Grant us your knowledge, patience, and compassion to serve all students in your care, for they have your gifts to celebrate. We ask this in your name, your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. So we're going to do some simulations, trying to put you in the shoes of some of the students that you might have in your classroom. In the world of special ed, when you can do, when you can see, when you can touch, when you can experience, you're more likely to have a better understanding. So we're going to do 4 activities today. Misunderstood minds, right or left, understand what, and testing. The idea is that we're going to simulate an activity that maybe you would do in your class, and then kind of talk about how that might be a challenge for a kid. And then we'll also cover some ideas and ways to provide interventions or even some accommodations to help that kid or those students in being successful in those activities. Okay, the first activity we're going to do is misunderstood minds. This is to simulate maybe those kiddos in your classroom that might have dyslexia or even have a specific learning disability in written expression. For your task, you're going to write a short description, 3 to 4 sentences about the picture to the right, using the rules provided, and the rules are going to be on the next slide. All you're going to do is write, but keep it in mind that there are rules when you write, and we all know that in the world of writing there are specific rules you have to follow. Well, we've created our own rules for you. Rule number 1: place 3 words that you want to begin each sentence with at the end of the sentence, with otherwise not changing the word order. Use on in place of and in place of on whenever you write those letter combinations, within the words or when they're alone in the sentence. And then 3, without changing the spelling, plus the letter H to the right of the letter T in all the words that begin with T, and to the left of the T in all the words that end with T. Students with a true writing disability would not be able to turn these rules on and off. We are just trying to experience what they do and what they go through when they write. I'm going to go to the next slide, and it's going to be that picture. I want you to pause the presentation, give yourself about 5 minutes, and start writing. Okay, how did it go? How did you feel when trying to describe that picture? Thinking of those rules, were you confused? Were you frustrated by the experience? Did you find it easy? Were you frustrated because you didn't understand what you were supposed to do? Did you get distracted or give up? Did you look around at the others around you? Was it too demanding? Or were you able to complete it? Was it pretty easy for you? These are all questions to think about when you are asking your students to do a writing assignment for you, because all of those feelings that you are having or you had during this example are things that our kids go through. Our kids that struggle with writing or have a writing disability oftentimes forget those rules. You know, I before E except after C, things we've learned since middle school. Those are rules that are hard. When you get to the high school level and you're asked to do MLA formatting without an example, MLA doesn't mean anything to kiddos who struggle with written expression. So what are some ways that we can support kids in the writing process? Providing specific rubrics step by step. If you create a rubric for your class for assignment, looking at that and taking it one step further, what kind of information do kids who struggle need? Do they need an example to look at? Do they need written out rules and not just bullet points? You know, can you tier your activities? No matter what grade level you're at, having a topic, but having it on a different level. Can you use graphic organizers or thinking maps to support the writing process? Instead of just saying start and write, you know, providing them with a graphic organizers to get down their thoughts and helping them through that process of thinking about what they want to write about and then how to support it. Interest stations, allowing students to choose an area of interest to further dive into. We all know if a kid likes to read it, they're going to read it more. If a kid wants to write about it, you're probably going to get good writing out of them. So giving them options of things to write about. Reduce the number of paragraphs or pages. So instead of saying you need to have 3 to 4 sentences, just saying, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to write, describe, tell me. You know, at the high school level, we often need to have 5 paragraphs, 700 words, three pages. Well, that's hard to do. So focusing more on helping students become fluent writers and less on the specifics of how many words, how many paragraphs, how many pages. Allow extended time. How many of you wanted more time after time was up? Like, oh, 2 more minutes, or could you give me 5 more minutes? You know, giving kids time to learn and to process through the writing is helpful. One-on-one instruction. Would it have been nice if someone came over and checked with you and said, hey, let me see what you have. Let me provide you some feedback. Let me look through it. Oh, you followed this rule, but you didn't do that. But allowing yourself some time to work with kids, you will find that their writing will continue to grow. Provide examples of what the end product should look like. You know, what does the heading look like? What does a works cited page look like? What do footnotes look like? What do page numbers look like? Or even what should I be writing about? You know, giving examples of kids to look back at will help that end product be closer to what you're wanting. And then create individual timelines for completion of work, like breaking things down into sections. You know, saying today we're going to work on the thesis. Tomorrow we're going to work on that first paragraph and we're going to find 1 quote. Or tomorrow we're going to come up with 3 describing words that describe our topic. You know, breaking it down into a timeline so they know what each day to expect and what they're required to get done in that time. There's a lot of ways to support kiddos who have dyslexia or written expression. These are just some of the ways.
Our next activity is called Right or Left. This activity is meant to simulate what it's like in a classroom for students that face challenges with dyslexia, dysgraphia, specific learning disabilities, particularly in basic reading, reading comprehension, or written expression. Okay, if you could take a moment and take out a writing utensil and a blank sheet of paper. For this exercise, we will be taking notes over structure of the United States government. There's only one rule for this activity, and that is you must write with your opposite or non-dominant hand. So we will go ahead and start with our notes. Here you can find our key terms. Strong central government, citizens, branches of government, bicameral, Virginia plan, New Jersey plan, and the Great Compromise. So those will be some of the key terms that we need to highlight today during our lecture. Okay, U.S. government that was originally proposed by the delegates. Okay, those characteristics include strong central government, overall limited power, branches of government. They wanted balanced power, and citizens were able to elect officials. There quickly became disagreement that formed between delegates of both large and small states. How solve the representation issue? Okay, two plans were presented. The first, the Virginia plan by James Madison and Edmund Randolph, the governor of Virginia at the time. And they both believed, or this plan believed, that representation in Congress should be based on state population, and therefore it favored our larger states. And a counter plan to that was the New Jersey plan by William Patterson. Okay, and they believed that each state should have equal representation in Congress, and this would favor the small states. Okay, so what kind of compromise did they reach during the time? And this leads us to our structure of government today. This was led by Roger Sherman out of Connecticut. Okay, and it resulted in the Great Compromise. Okay, it's more support small states for equal representation with 2 senators from each state, and it also supports large states with representation in the House based on state population. Okay, the Great Compromise leads to the United States in a bicameral Congress, which is made up of the House and the Senate. Okay, and some questions to think about at this time would be the overview. So you could take a few moments and think about or jot down notes. What was difficult on this assignment. This could have been the handwriting, taking notes with having to write with your opposite hand. This could simulate students with dysgraphia that may have poor handwriting. The pacing of the lecture may have been difficult to keep up with. I know I went through it relatively quickly, but this is something that students often have to overcome. Also, you might have noticed that there were many misspelled words or transposed letters. This is oftentimes how some students might see our lectures or might see anything that's printed on a worksheet, that's printed on the board. So these students might benefit from more of auditory learning. Okay, a couple things to think about. What assistance can a teacher provide to students presented with these challenges? What might help, or what can you do in your classroom to help these students? Just a few things that we believe that is important that we try to collaborate with on our teachers is do not solely rely on lecture. Lecture is important, however, it can create passive learners. It may seem like students are engaged, because they're quietly taking notes, but are they really soaking up the information and understanding the content that you feel is important in your classroom? Take time within presenting new content to be able to teach effective note-taking strategies. Okay, by creating timelines, drawing diagrams, or providing different images for those students to make connections. Writing questions in the margins. And one of the important things is highlighting key terms, key words. This might help students, to really focus in on the most important information when they're reviewing for a test. Providing auditory or visual representation of material. This could be your textbook, different video clips, teacher modeling examples, really showing the students what you expect of them. And that way they're able to see that and be able to get a good start with the new information. Also, a big thing is guided notes. If you go ahead and access the QR code that we provided at the beginning of the presentation, you can find a copy of guided notes for this particular lecture that we went through quickly. There's two different ways you could do it. One is you could just simply provide the guided notes with the fill in the blanks. But some students may also need those keywords in a word bank at the bottom of the page provided. So you can provide that, or let the student access that without the word bank as well. Again, it just kind of depends on the ability level of your student and what needs they might need met to be successful in your classroom. And always provide a learning objective, and really allow the students to focus in on what they need to hone in on for the day. Recording your lessons can also be important to allow some students to access afterwards in case they feel like they missed anything in the notes. They can always go back and fill in.
Okay, the next activity we're going to do is called difficulty understanding. This is going to simulate a student maybe with an intellectual disability in your classroom, or a student that has a specific learning disability such as basic reading, reading comprehension, or those kiddos who have struggle with written expression. So your task today, you're going to draw a picture with the help of a friend. So this is a group activity, so find someone next to you who can do this with you. Directions, you're going to pick a partner. One of you will be drawing, and the other one will be explaining how to draw. 2, the person drawing is not allowed to look at the picture, so make sure your back is to the screen. And 3, the one explaining, make sure you can see the screen. You want to make sure you have a piece of paper and a pencil so that you can do this. It can be anything that you have close to you. We're going to give you about 5 minutes, so make sure when we get to the picture, you pause so that you get ample time to describe. And go. Okay, was that difficult? Which partner had the hardest job? The one explaining and the one that's trying to describe, or the one that's trying to draw what's being explained? What could have helped? What could we have done differently? What would have been nice to know about your partner before going in? Left-handed, right-handed, shapes. How would you describe things? So when we think about that in our classroom, we think about how when we're standing up and we're presenting a lesson, how can we make sure that we are hitting all of those kids who learn differently? And a lot of the things that are talked about in the other simulations can be used for an activity like this. Guided notes. It's really hard for all kids, but especially kids that process different, to listen, to write, and to retain. We like to think that we can be multitaskers, but that actually is very difficult to do. So if that person who was supposed to be drawing maybe had a portion of that picture, would you have been more successful? Maybe providing a quick glance. If we could have seen the picture beforehand, knowing that it was going to be abstract shaped, we would have gone into it looking at it differently. Or the person describing, if you would have known certain words to use for that kid, it could have helped. So thinking about your instruction when you're presenting information, looking at it from all different angles and making sure that you have the resources such as guided notes, videos, pictures, timelines, all of those things that can help make connections to what you're trying to get your students to learn are going to be helpful.
The next activity is simply called testing. Please take a moment to access the math test found using the QR code providing at the beginning of the presentation. Okay, you'll notice that the math tests are the same with the exception of the directions on each test. On one set, the directions are provided, and while on the other test, there are no instructions included. Okay, this activity is best completed in a small group, with one group completing the test that has instructions, while the other group is completing the test without instructions. You can take the test individually if working alone. At this time, you can pause the presentation and take a few minutes to complete the math test. Okay, this activity helps us think about those students that may skip reading instructions, that may not read instructions completely, or they may not have an understanding what the assignment is asking of them or what the directions on a test are asking them to do, therefore creating difficulty with task completion or showing mastery of the content that you are asking of them. Okay, so what can we do? How can we help these students? These strategies do not necessarily pertain to the math tests you've taken, but are overall ideas to help with creating tests in order to help guide student organization and thinking on test days. Okay, different ideas provided in the presentation are reading directions out loud to class, chunking vocabulary. Sometimes students are asked to study 30, 50, 60 vocab words at a time, and often can be overwhelmed with that amount of information. Sometimes chunking vocab in groups of 5 to 7 or highlighting words and definitions that go together can help lessen the stress and anxiety on test day. Providing word banks is also a beneficial tool to use on these tests. Sometimes it's beneficial to indicate how many times an option will be used. Allow students to utilize student created note cards. And then overall, we have just general accommodations of alternate setting, extended time, having the test read, oral testing. An example of this in our school is one of our physical science teachers. She will have students take the test during class time. But she also provides the opportunity for them to return after school to further discuss a question maybe they didn't completely understand, and they are able to maybe get points back after sharing their knowledge with the teacher verbally. And sometimes that's the best way for students to show their mastery as well. One key point that I do want to make is collaborating with general education teachers. Sometimes the word fair often comes up when we talk about testing because we do want to uphold high expectations for all of our students. Fair is not always equal, but I think it's important to understand that fair is doing what is necessary for each individual student to maximize their potential for success. Again, and that could be in creative ways on how we create our test, or different ways that we provide instruction, to help them kind of ease some of that test anxiety. Again, but it's important to have open communication with our teachers when we're doing that to help produce the best outcomes for students.
Where do you start? We gave you a lot of information in those 4 simulations. Creative thinking is essential to differentiate in instruction, but many of you are most likely doing a lot of this already in your classrooms. So just thinking outside of the box when it comes to lessons is the place to start. Meeting students where they are and understanding their learning styles is going to help you to figure out how you can support kids. Support kids who are struggling, and even support those kids who are super intelligent and need to be pushed more. There's three types of learners, 3 different learning styles. You have our visual learners. So does the student perform tasks better if they can draw it, if they can see a product first, if they can connect it to a video or a song? Are they auditory? Does the student perform tasks better if they can tell you what they know, if they can explain a process, if they can make the connection for you verbally? And then you have your kinesthetic. Does a student perform better if they can create something, if they can mold something, if they can create a PowerPoint, if they can bring in that volcano and explain the parts of it? Can they show you what they can create to show you that they've learned? All 3 things should be taken into consideration with your assessments, with your activities, your products, your processes. All 3 of those things should be taken in consideration when you're planning. So your learning styles, your visuals, pictures, diagrams, charts, displays, handouts, instructions, videos, manipulatives, rubrics with detail, written directions, flashcards, outlines, thinking maps. Your auditory learners, listening to the audio version of text, watching instructional videos, read alouds, discussion groups, recording yourself teaching. And your kinesthetic, touching, feeling, holding, doing, practical hands-on, incorporating body movement, anything that gets your body moving so that you can make the connection. So something to keep in mind is that there is a difference between differentiated instruction and specific accommodations. Differentiated instruction is supporting all students in the general education classroom with ongoing assessments, flexible grouping to meet all learning styles. This can happen during the process, the product, or the content being presented. When you look at specific accommodations, you're supporting the needs of individual students, both inside and outside of the classroom. These are decided by the support team, teachers, students, parents, and it's based on a documented disability and ongoing observation. Now, there are accommodations that can also be used as interventions and supports for all kids. Let's look at the content. What the student is expected to learn. We are differentiating how students are receiving information they are expected to learn. Something to keep in mind, modifying the content is the last resort. This is done in applied classes or special education classes outside of your classroom. When you are changing the content, you are modifying the curriculum. So that looks completely different outside of your classroom. Differentiating the content and curriculum delivered to students, students benefit from the content that matches their interest level and their ability levels. Some require more or less challenging content based on their reading levels. Students who are unfamiliar with a lesson could be required to complete a task on a lower level, remembering and understanding, versus applying or explaining. Students with some mastery or prior knowledge could be asked to apply and analyze the content, but spending time with that prior knowledge piece is huge. Pre-teaching vocabulary, giving them the book ahead of time to read during the summer or a video to watch so they can make connections with characters. Or students who have high level of mastery could be asked to complete tasks in areas of evaluating and creating. So there's all different ways of how we can support the content without modifying the curriculum.
Next, we will focus on the process of how we deliver instruction to promote student engagement and learning. It is important to keep in mind the variety of learning styles and strategies students will bring to the classroom. Sometimes we must consider how we can motivate students to learn based on the activities that we choose to introduce new content and to reinforce check for understanding and mastery of concepts. Just a few ways we can do this in the classroom. During independent work time, allowing students to receive one-on-one and direct instruction. Provide additional worksheets, videos, activities for students to dive deeper, particularly in an area of interest, and they can access those after class. Using formative assessments throughout a lesson to check for understanding, and help students utilizing mnemonic devices to show mastery and aid their learning. Additionally, we can also provide audio versions of books, texts, short stories, and articles based on their ability or interest levels. Here at Elias, we have utilized Bookshare, and we're also moving forward going to utilize Learning Ally as well to help benefit our students and meet their needs. One last thing we do, particularly in our math classes, is providing a formula or equation checklist, particularly for multi-step problems in order to help organize and foster student thinking. Finally, how do we incorporate the product on how our students will demonstrate mastery of the content? Okay, assessment doesn't always have to be simply a short answer or a true false, fill in the blank. I think it's important that we allow for creativity when assessing student mastery. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all demonstration of knowledge. This product can be in the form of tests, projects, reports, oral summary, or any other forms that you might find beneficial. Okay, the required product can change based on the material being taught, and on a student-to-student basis. Again, formative assessments are ongoing and can be used to measure what students have learned, and they can also be used to guide our next step instruction. Is it okay to move forward? Do we need to go back and address a certain topic as a group, or do we need to check in individually with students? And ways we can do this are group discussions, journal entries, entrance and exit tickets, 4 corners, 3, 2, 1, think, pair, share, and different things like that. And finally, our summative assessments. How do we evaluate how much the student learned in a chapter or a certain period of time? I think an important thing is to allow for student creativity and being flexible in how we gauge and assess student mastery of certain topics.
The last piece to supporting all learners is the organizational piece. And I say that, and I'm sure many kids come to your mind who struggle with organization. If they could just keep track of their things, or if they would just write down when things are supposed to be due, or if they would take a picture of what I wrote on the board, they would know. Well, here's some suggestions on ways to help kids organize their material. Instructions. Giving instructions verbally is a great thing, but also providing them written. Having a copy of them to take home so that they know specifically what they're supposed to be doing when they get home for homework. Repeat those instructions. I know that it's frustrating to have to repeat yourself over and over again, but some kids need to hear it multiple times. Check in with that kid after giving instructions, making sure that they heard what you said. Having them say it back to you is going to tell you what they understood from what you said and what they completely looked over. And then again, providing those written instructions so they know what they're supposed to do when they go home. Writing assignments and due dates on the whiteboard, having them take a picture of those. I know cameras are not always allowed in classrooms, but it is a great way for them to have a great reminder of what they're supposed to do, because kids are more likely to lose that planner they're filling out than they are a cell phone. Posting those assignments, due dates, guidelines online, so through Google Classroom or Blackboard or whatever your school uses, providing that there also helps parents. Verbal cues to turn in assignments, not just expecting a kid to walk up and put it in the bin like we would love them to be able to do, but actually looking at the kid in the eye and saying, hey, turn in that math assignment. Hey, did you bring me back that permission slip? Looking at them will make a huge difference. Movement. Allowing students to use a clipboard when they write, walk around in the back of the room, move up and down the hallway, using T-stools, balance balls, tennis balls on 2 of the 4 legs, any type of movement will also help. Providing check-in and check-out. Need a time during the day to make sure before they leave that building, they know specifically what they're doing for you. Chunking larger multiple step projects. I know we talked about kind of creating a timeline that would fall underneath that. Creating checklists, consistent routines. The same thing happens every day when they come in your classroom. That will help organization. Help students know what papers to keep and what papers to recycle. This can be done with a highlighter. Anything with yellow, you can recycle when I give it back. Anything with red, you want to keep until your semester ends, or you want to keep until the end of the week. Allowing time in your class to clean out binders. Kids save everything. The kids that seem to be the most disorganized seem to want to keep everything because they are so afraid they're going to lose something. Well, when they do that, they end up losing it because there's no room to put it. So helping them clean out their binders, clean out their lockers, clean out their notebooks, all very important things to do. Color coding, the math notebook should be red and the folder that goes with it should be red. English, your notebook is yellow, that folder should be yellow. So when you are color coding things, it's easy for kids to grab exactly what they need because they know that English is that color. Chunking morning, afternoons in a binder. Those of you who split the day and kids go to different classes, having a binder for 1st through 4th hour with notebooks and folders, and then having a binder for after lunch for 5th through 7th or 5th through 8th hour. Everything is kept in the same binder. So even if they miss and put it in the wrong folder, it's at least in the morning binder. Using a planner, We have found that using apps on phones work a little bit better because, like I said earlier, students are less likely to lose a cell phone than they are a planner. My homework app is a great app. It connects to parents' phones. So when kids upload what they have to do, like if they write in their, test Friday in English, parents also get notifications and it's free. Keeping track of assignments and notes, and there's a ton of apps out there that you can use. And then using graph paper for students who struggle with handwriting. It keeps numbers in line if you're doing math. It keeps sizes of letters the correct size, so they're not writing too big or too small when they're taking notes. So all great things to help kids even get started with the process, or is the organizational piece. For kids can be organized, they're one step closer to being able to be successful in your classroom. I know we gave you a lot of information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Kelly or I. We are happy to help and provide any resources that we have. If you have anything you wanted to add, please, reach out. We're always looking to grow in this profession. You'll see the QR code down here at the bottom. If you scan that, that will give you access to this PowerPoint and also some different resources that we've added to the folder. Thank you again for watching our presentation, and we really hope that you are able to support all learners in your classroom.